So when I say introduce the next sphere of mindfulness, that doesn't mean to say that we stop doing the first one. It's not like, okay, life sorted, kitchen drawer sorted, room sorted, life sorted, okay, now meaning, It's never quite like that. I think day-to-day mindfulness, if anything, it gets more and more important. The thing that strikes me most, of course, is technology. I was saying in the group that I was in that, when I first started doing these, I remember I used to talk about television, then I used to talk about computers, and now you talk about phones, and then you talk about apps. So it's very, very easy now for your attention to belong to the marketplace, really. And the marketplace wants your attention and will pay for your attention. It wants to know what you want, and then it wants to keep on trying to provide it. Like recently I was trying to buy a lamp for our retreat centre, for a new room we got in our retreat centre. And now every time I go online, there's hundreds of lamps everywhere, thinking, who's been watching me? Which one? I'll tell you, it's pretty nice lamp too. So, this question of day-to-day mindfulness is ever more important. How do you own your attention? If you don't own your attention, there's lots and lots. There's a whole multi-million-pound industry out there that wants to own your attention. And there's very little encouragement to own your attention. In the olden days, religion and society used to sort of function as a way to stopping you do certain things that you knew wouldn't be in your own interest. But a lot of those strictures are taken away. So for some of you, it would be very easy to go to a porn site. Don't worry, don't put your hands up. There's some of you it'll be recipes. Some of you it'll be Guardian, the Guardian, whatever, thingy-bob, newspaper. That's the one. So there's always something wanting your attention. So part of this day-to-day mindfulness is starting to own your attention, which is really just a posh way of saying own your life. It's so easy, isn't it, to dribble your life away, flicking through Facebook, looking at your Snapchat, whatever it is, your night with that film station, whatever it's called. Which is it called? Thank you. Where you just go, all these things, you try to go through them to decide which all of these gorgeous looking pictures you want to actually press on, So the first thing we're trying to do is take back our attention, really, partly, from the marketplace, because the marketplace wants to own your attention and manipulate it. So the first thing we're trying to do is take back our attention, which partly means just trying to get our life in order. It's very easy for one's life, especially now, to get more and more out of order, isn't it? Where you always feel like you never quite do anything properly, that you're always on the run, jobs are never finished. Partly the nature of work now is so different, isn't it? So it's very complicated. Very little of it is direct. So, you email someone about something which you get an out-of-office reply back, which means the email you're going to send to somebody else, you have to hold because you need to hear, and then you phone, and then life has become more and more itty-bitty like that, hasn't it? And that's causing more and more stress and more distraction. Hardly any of us have any jobs anymore where you just do a job, do it, finish it, and know you finished it. A friend of mine was talking about a friend of hers who is in media, and she went on a skiing holiday, and she would ski down the slope and then look at her emails at the bottom, and then go back up and ski down again and answer an email, And she was saying that's just the assumption that you're never offline, yeah. So if you don't do it, there's nobody else really that's going to help you, And that's where are you going to find your discipline from? Where am I going to find my self-discipline from? I think it's a new issue for people. A new issue, really. Needs more thought about. But if you try to do that, if you start to reduce your input, like I was saying last week, if you try to gain mastery so that you're not always in a kind of half chaos or even a full chaos, what you start to notice is your experience more, isn't it? someone was saying in my group that they're off work and then they decided, okay, I won't send the emails, blah, 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 but now what do I do? There's that sort of vacuum that can open up. Yeah? So what you start to notice when you start to practice day-to-day mindfulness to some degree is you notice your body. Yeah? You notice, oh good heavens, I've got a body. I'd kind of forgotten that. And often you notice that your body's uncomfortable. So when the Buddha taught mindfulness, the first thing he wanted to stress is mindfulness of the body and its movements. Yeah? Interestingly, the Buddha didn't teach day-to-day mindfulness, mainly because life was incredibly simple there. There was the odd cow, wandering across, but it was very, very simple, unimaginably simple for us now. Because of times change so much, there needs to be a whole new area of mindfulness to teach mindfulness of day-to-day life. Yeah? So the first thing he would emphasize is this awareness of your body, mindfulness of your body. Yeah? So that's the area of mindfulness I want to talk about tonight, and that this is the area of mindfulness I want you to be practicing in your home practice this week. Yeah? How I want to go into this, I'm not quite sure. It's such a big subject. I think usually it's better for me to start what's just uppermost in my mind. So I've got these two little girls in my life. They're not so little anymore. They're 10 and 11. And one of them is starting to worry. It's interesting, at a certain age you can start to worry. And I've been trying to sort of talk to her about worrying. And very sort of striking, isn't it, that how do you talk about worrying? So I say, well, what are you worrying about? We go through that, and I say, and do you think worrying helps about that? And she said, no, it doesn't. Then she said, but then I worry about worrying. So I think, okay, yeah, that's right. We do worry about worrying. So is there, and then just now, before the class, she rang me saying she has to do this little presentation in her class or something. And she said, I don't know what to say. So I suggested, and she said, I can't say that. And that experience, I don't know whether you've had with children, where you're trying to help, but they've already got a sort of self-confirming sort of story. So you could already feel that I'm worrying about this. So I said, are you worried about it? She said, no, which would mean it is. And then she's already got this idea that it's not going to go well, and that, I already know that. And I could say, no, you don't know that. It's very, very difficult to help, she said to me. You can see that even at that age, at 10 or 11, your mind is shaping your experience and keeps confirming itself. Yeah. So it's very difficult to say, how do you find your way out of that? So that's fine for a 10 and 11-year-old in a way, but it's also very true for us, isn't it? A lot of the time, that we're wrapped up in, consumed by the stories that we're telling about ourselves and about the people around us. What we think will happen, what we feel even sure will happen, the kind of person we are. Worry now is becoming kind of epidemic, isn't it? Partly because of the nature of life being so broken up. Partly because there's so many things now you can forget, and it leaves you that horrible sense of, I've forgotten something. And every time you relax, you remember you've forgotten something. Yeah. So a massive question for all of us now is, how do I get more perspective on this mind of mine, which is thinking, worrying, talking, remembering, fantasizing, thinking, actually a lot, and all of that is being exacerbated because we're doing a lot of that online. Worrying, thinking, talking, fantasizing, remembering, and so on. So our kind of thinking faculty is now kind of spreading all the way through the World Wide Web. Yeah? And all you need to do is hop from one thinking faculty to another. So we're like, we're increasingly, I think, becoming like a Zen saying, which is a dragon's head in a snake's body. That's what we're like, that we've got this dragon's head, in other words, his head full of fire and noise and talk, and very little awareness of a body, a thin snake's body. Yeah? This was true in the Buddha's time, otherwise the Buddha wouldn't have emphasized this, but it's ever so more true now. because that dragon's head is it's almost all that we're doing now. Hardly anyone can dig a ditch or run for a bus or, I don't know, a friend of mine recently came and mended my chair, which was just been, I don't know what to do with it. Once it breaks, you should stare at it, Can I download one, Is it on my phone? Seemed almost miraculous that there was such a thing called a screw. Apparently they are screws and they go into wood. Anyway, I won't go on about it. The way to work on this dragon's head, the snake's body, which is a brilliant metaphor for it, isn't it? And sometimes that dragon's head can be kind of, I'm a successful, happy dragon, having lots of incredible creative thoughts. And sometimes it's like a terrible, destructive dragon, isn't it? And sometimes it's just burbling somewhere in between. But very often our experience is dominated by thinking, remembering, forgetting, fantasizing, and so on. Sometimes to a painful degree. So, for instance, one of the areas of great concern is the epidemic in depression. In the 1960s, in the early 1960s, it tended to be a middle-aged man's problem. People it happened to men of my age. Now even teenagers are getting depressed. Nobody quite knows why. It's 10 times more common than it was in 1960. I think it's by 2020 or something, it's going to be the second biggest disease burden worldwide, after coronary heart disease, I think. One of the primary symptoms of depression is that self-problematizing. What's wrong with me? Why am I not happy? I was fine a minute ago and now I don't feel, that kind of self-problematizing, worrying kind of mental state, and then, oh no, I shouldn't be thinking like this. I know I'm not supposed to do that. Oh, I'm doing it again. I can't believe it. Why am I doing that? Very typical kind of depressive style of thinking. And it really is epidemic, and hugely destructive. And the more you try and think of your way out of that, the more you get into it. So your strategy is to stop thinking, get yourself out of the problem of thinking, become the problem of thinking, if you see what I mean. As soon as you try and tell yourself not to think, as soon as you tell yourself off for what you're thinking, you're just creating more and more of that dragon's head. And that's becoming, more and more of a kind of disease, a contemporary disease. Actually, a disease amongst the privileged, meaning us, who are hugely privileged. It's a sort of privileged person's disease, but it is nevertheless very much disease. So what we're trying to learn here, and I think it's something, whether you suffer from depressive thinking styles or not, perhaps it doesn't matter too much labelling it, is learning really quite urgently to notice your thoughts doing that thing, whether it's telling yourself you're too sexy for your shirt, just to use a not too contemporary reference, or whether you're telling yourself that why am I never happy, or why don't things work for me, or I bet you this little thing I'm going to do in the classroom tomorrow that won't work. Those sort of stories. It's not just I can't think of anything to say. We need to quite urgently, all of us, train in stepping out of that. Really, really quite urgently, and we need to train it on ourselves and help our friends and family train in doing that. So you cannot think yourself out of thought. You cannot think yourself out of thought. The more you try and do that, the more you create more and more of that dragon's head, and eventually the fire eats you up, as it were. So what you can do is you can notice yourself in that thought. Actually, the word thought is too grand. Thought is something that philosophers do. It's a wonderful thing, thought. I remember a while ago reading about Schopenhauer's thought, and you follow his thought, and it's quite staggeringly deep and creative. So let's not sort of have a downer on thought. Thought is a fabulous thing. We don't have a word for this in English. Actually, the Buddhist word is prapuncture. Very important word in Buddhist thought. Prapuncture, which means mental proliferation, which is probably a better way of putting it. The mind spreading out, reaching out, proliferating horizontally, Worrying about worrying, fantasizing about fantasy, being distracted from distraction by distraction. All of that is prapuncture. Yeah? Interestingly, one of the epithets of the Buddha is nisprapuncture, which means no prapuncture. The Buddha can think, and think very, very deeply indeed, but he doesn't have that noisy, clattery, chattery, repetitive, driven, unaware kind of mind state. He never has that. Yeah? So we need to train in stepping out of that noisy, repetitive mind state. And just to give you a little bit more sense of that noisy, repetitive mind state, it's automatic, or it easily becomes automaticized. Yeah? Human beings are deeply habituating creatures. We habituate very quickly. So that you remember that the classic example of this is when you learn to drive. Do you remember that? And at first it's really, you can feel your mind having to think about it. You say mirror, signal, manoeuvre, and you can feel the tension of that, and you can feel your mind kind of pointing at each thing, can't you? You can feel that you're having to use that kind of pointy, focused element of your mind. But before you know it, you're mirror signalling and manoeuvring, and you never do that thing ever again until after your test. I don't know whether they still do that, but we used to always have to do that. You weren't allowed to cross your hands. And it's the afternoon after your test, you're doing that all the time, aren't you? But very quickly you can do all of that, be driving in busy traffic, which, remember, is incredibly dangerous. It's incredible that we can do that. We can do that while listening. In my book I put listening to Kylie Minogue, but she's a bit then, isn't she, now? I don't know what you listen to now. Alex will know, but I'll have to ask her. Listening to music or talking to somebody without thinking about that at all. So all of those actions become automatic, yeah? Human being, and the other example I've used is when you have breakfast. You don't think, now where's the spoon, opening all the drawers. If you go and visit somebody else's house, it is like that. You think, okay, spoon. And then you think, Weetabix. I've got no idea whether But in your own kitchen, it's all sorted, so you do it, don't you? Without thinking at all. Really good that you can do that. You couldn't live without this automatic part of your brain, yeah? Otherwise it'd be exhausting if you had to think about everything. The problem with this automatic pilot is that your thoughts are also on automatic pilot, which basically means you'll tend to think the kind of things you tend to think. So if that's harsh self-criticism, you'll tend to float automatically back into that tendency. Like, I don't know, say you're doing the washing up at home and you're not distracted by the radio or listening to something, because you can have it on but still do that. Your mind, if that's been your habit, will automatically just go back to its automatic settings. Or if you automatically, you're one of those lucky people who think you're absolutely wonderful, hands up, and think, you're, as people used to say, you're God's gift. You'll just go you'll just go back to the fantasies of success, of sex, of fame, and that'll become automatic. Whatever you tend to think gets automaticized, so that when you're not attending to your mind will naturally go in that direction. A friend of mine, what he does is he automatically just plans to find a way of making as much pleasure in his life as possible. So he thinks, okay, on the way to work, I'll stop in that really good cafe because I can. He does it with an almost frightening kind of strategy of pleasure. Yeah, some people do that automatically. Some people get into resentful feelings very easily. Some people get into blame narratives very easily. And often those more negative ones will show up more if you get tired, if you're ill. Sometimes for me, like I have more of that kind of slightly depressive tendency. I always have had, even when I was very young, I had a very strong kind of depressive habit of self-problematizing, what's wrong with me, why am I never happy, that sort of thing. And I would just float. I'm not so prone to it now, although I still am. If I'm not careful, if I'm tired, that feeling of tiredness starts to get me into that, what's wrong, I don't feel very good now, my life, could get me into that sort of narrative of catastrophe. Yeah? And actually it's just that I'm tired. What they realise, for instance, with that kind of depressive thinking is that your thoughts, your body sensations, and your feelings all get wired together. So just one of those things will set off the whole system. Yeah. So they've done some research with people who get depressed. So if you bring the lights down and make a darker room and play some sad music like Leonard Cohen, if you're not prone to depression, you'll tend to just think, that's so true, my life like that, God, that voice you wish you had. If you're not, that'll be fine, you'll quite enjoy it. If you're prone to depression, just that darkening of the mood and bringing down the mood will set off, oh dear, I don't feel very good now, I was fine a minute ago, what's wrong? It will set off the rest of the patterning, yeah? So what happens is our automatic thinking, and we've all got automatic thinking, and some of it's sort of all right, although probably rather superficial, inevitably superficial. It will link in with your body sensations and your feeling tone, yeah? And it'll set off the whole system. So what you're trying to learn in mindfulness of the body is noticing yourself in prapuncture. I think it's good to have this simple Buddhist word for prapuncture, mental proliferation, that you notice that and you step out of that into the direct sensations of your body. Yeah, so your knees aren't thinking, the weight of your body and the seat now isn't thinking about those things, whether it is always planning what you need to be doing or always thinking I'm going to forget something, whatever your habitual thought patternings will be. You're trying to learn, first of all, just to keep noticing that. Notice it with a sense of humour. You really need your sense of humour. Absolutely, folks. That's why occasionally I have a few jokes, is you really need a sense of humour. You really need one. You really, really need one. Okay? You will not do well, folks, without a sense of humour. If you haven't got one, go and get one now. Yeah? Or at least spend time with people who've got a sense of humour. So try to notice that. Try to notice that habit of thinking. Try to notice it without any kind of judgment, because that tendency to judgment itself gets automatic. So my Alex saying, I worry about worrying. It gets automatic. You think, oh God, I don't feel very good. What's wrong? Oh no, I shouldn't be thinking that. I can't believe I'm thinking that. That tendency to judge the kind of thinking you have, usually judge it negatively, becomes automatic as well. Yeah? So you try to notice the thinking that you're in, the prapuncture you're in, and you try to notice it as straightforwardly as possible. And it's a cue to relax, first of all, and it's a cue to just feel your body. Yeah? And in a way, I think the Buddha now would teach this more than ever. He'd be wanting to say, Maharaja, you cannot do these eight weeks on all these different subjects. Let's just do 8 weeks on this. Yeah? He'd be teaching this more than ever. You notice your mind going off into fantasy, self-criticism, blame, resentment, success stories, hard done by stories, and you use that as a cue to think, okay, let me just feel how that is in the body. So, okay, if I'm worrying, what does that feel like in the body? If I'm excited because I've got this hot date tomorrow night, what does that feel like in the body? And then see if you can just be with that experience in the body. Yeah? So first of all, you need to be aware of it if you can. Don't worry if you're not that aware. Often you're not aware of it at the time. Because our mind habituates, and it habituates so quickly, our thinking, so-called thinking, is happening just below the level of awareness. So we often don't notice we're doing it. And one of the main things you're trying to learn is noticing, I'm doing that thing. I'm just worrying about that, and I do that, Or for me, I'm just tired now. I don't need to take those thoughts too seriously, yeah? So you, first of all, trying to become aware of what's actually going on just under the level of your awareness, yeah? But is affecting your mood very strongly. And that can be, like Alex's sense of that little talk she's doing tomorrow, that's not going to go well. And that'll be already affecting her mood, and that'll make her feel, gosh, I'm right, because my mood is going down, and that'll make me feel that it's not going to work, that talk. And then if you're not careful, that low mood takes you into that talk. You feel you don't do very well, and you think, I was right, I knew it wouldn't work. Yeah? And that makes your mood go lower. Yeah? So what we don't realise is that that's to do with thoughts that are running just underneath the surface. Stories, self-justifying stories. So you try to notice that and step into the body. Yeah? And you're trying to learn to do that again and again and again. And you'll never get it right, okay? You'll never get it right. You'll never think, done that, finished. Okay, next stage, my mind perfectly quiet, whole day, have another thought. Okay. So what do we do next? If you do, you take over here, okay? Because you need to be the teacher. So don't think of it as something you're going to get right. Just keep practicing it. Yeah. In fact, the whole idea of mindfulness as something you might get right or not right is not helpful. Yeah. It's a Nike practice. You just do it. You keep on noticing your mind, and you keep on being aware of the kind of thought patterns you're habituating into, and you keep stepping out of that into your body. And that gives you perspective on your mind. Yeah. Sounds simple, but it's like we're trying to do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're trying to do it all the time. That's almost impossibly idealistic. So in a minute, I'm going to give you a way of practicing this in the week that you can know whether you've done it and come back and talk about it. I just thought of one other thing I wanted to mention about it. But now it might have gone out of my mind. Oh, yes. So this stepping out of thought, out of prapuncture, going into your mind, you don't need to think about. I don't mean now think about your body. Yeah. I remember teaching this one. People said I was fine until you asked me to think about my body. Thinking, I didn't ask you to think about your body. So as I talk now, I can feel the weight of my body on the chair, and I can feel what I'm doing with my hands. Yeah. Now I don't need to stop talking to do that. I don't need to suddenly go all spiritual like this. I can feel the weight. That was a joke. Thank you for smiling. I can still feel the weight of my body on the chair, the warmth of my backside. I think I can say that word on the chair. I can feel this peppermint tea in my hand. It's slightly warm. The more I do that, it does naturally slightly change me. It slightly changes the tone of and it does slightly naturally slow me down, but it doesn't I'm not trying to do that. And as you listen to me, you can notice what your hands are doing now and what your hands are touching. You don't need to close your eyes or stop listening to me or think about your hands. And as I'm talking, just as I'm now aware of the weight of my body on the chair, and I can, if I do that a bit more, it does sort of slow me down a bit more. And that changes slightly the atmosphere of me as I talk, slightly brings me into my body a bit more. You can do that, can't you? You can listen to me, and you can be aware of your hands and what your hands are touching, and you can be aware of the weight of your body on the cushions of the chair. And everything is still carrying on. You're not having to suddenly close your eyes, and I'm not having to stop speaking. But the more I do that, and now I can start to feel my feet on the floor, and my feet are slightly cool, and you can feel your feet on the floor. Yeah? So that's what you're trying to do. Yeah? So I'm not stopping doing this. I'm not suddenly switching over into some weird mindfulness mode. I'm just noticing my body as I speak. And do you see how it does change how I come across slightly, doesn't it? It changes it slightly to me as well, yeah? So I might at the moment be in a meeting that I'm finding difficult, and I might think, okay, I'm going to just do that thing. I'm one of those people who generally I don't particularly thrive in meetings. Some people do, don't they? But I don't. So quite often I have to, keep on just tuning into my body, so that when I speak, it's coming from a kind of a place that's getting a bit more like this, if you see, and not that place of tension. Yeah? So you can be in a meeting at work, you can be someone who's talking about meeting their boss, you can try to practice it. Yeah. You don't need to do it very seriously, you don't need to suddenly get all kind of spiritual about it. You can do it and keep doing it now, so you can keep feeling your weight on the chair, and I can as well. And without doing very much, it kind of changes things a bit. Yeah. So what I want to do is I want to carry on doing that. I want you to carry on doing that as I'm telling you what to do, and I'll keep coming back to that sensation of my weight on the chair and my feet on the floor. And I can feel that as because I'm talking to you, and because you're all looking at me, it makes me want to not do that, and but I can actually just do that, and you can do that. So what I want to do now is say what I'd like you to do for your home practice. Then what we'll do is a bit of time for you to talk about how you're going to do that, and then there might be some time for questions at the end. So I'm still aware of my weight on the chair, and you can still be aware now. And you can still be aware of your hands. And as you do that, you'll start to feel that quite naturally your self-sense changes slightly, doesn't it? It feels less tight, slightly less like you're en route somewhere, doesn't it? Difficult. It's be impossible to remember to do this all the time. Yeah, I don't remember to do this all the time, and you won't be able to. So what I'm suggesting is that you decide to do a mindful walk every day. I talk about this in the book, I can't remember what page it's on, but if you want to, just on the way back tonight, have a look at this bit I've talked about, the mindful walk. So choose a time where you walk every day. If possible, the same walk that you always do. So don't add a walk to your day if possible. Sometimes people don't seem to walk anymore. So you might need to find a way of bringing some walking into your day, yeah. But try not to do a sort of special spiritually walk, because you won't carry on basically. So it needs to be something already. Otherwise you go, spiritual, I'm so spiritual. Then the next thing I actually forget that. I just want a coffee, So try and do a walk you do every day, and you're just going to, if possible, around 10 minutes, something like that. Not like 20 minutes, it's probably going to be too long. Quarter of an hour, something like that. But not like 3 minutes where you hardly notice, yeah? Something around 10 minutes. So like for me, actually, I live upstairs. I mostly commute in my slippers, which I bought recently at an incredible cost because I spend most of my life in slippers. So I just walk up and down these stairs. So sometimes what I do, I just think, okay, I'm going to use that. Just walking up and down these stairs, because I don't do any one particular walk. I mean, I meet lots of people, but so I might just think every time I walk up the stairs, I'm just going to use that as a reminder to come back to body awareness. Yeah. So it might be something like that for you. Okay, I'm not going to use a lift at work. I'm just going to use the stairs, and I'm just going to use that. That's the time when I'm going to do that thing about noticing what kind of thoughts I'm in, stepping out of that into direct experience of my body. And I'm not going to do that because it's good for me, or it's going to stop me being stressed, or it means I'm going to be more successful, whatever it is. I'm just going to do that for no really good reason, just because that guy at the front told me to do it. In other words, you're not trying to get a particular goal out of it, including the goals like relaxing, all that sort of things, which become problematic in themselves. If you're not careful, you think, I did it was great, I really relaxed, and then the next time you think, it didn't work now. Yeah. So you're not trying to have any kind of goal, you're just trying to do it. Yeah. And you can keep doing it now, so you can keep remembering where your hands are. You don't need to remember it, do you? You just need to notice your hands now, and I can notice mine, and my weight. And if you can, in the book, I've given you a little place where you can write about how you found that. Don't worry if you can't do that. But the main thing is see if you can come up with a walk that you do every day, and that you know when that walk starts and when it stops. So, if it's my walk, is it the corridor from my room to the stairs, or it's just the stairwell? If it's you going to the tube stop, when does it start? Does it start when you close your door? And does it finish when you swipe your Oyster card or whatever it is, yeah? So you've got a clear parameter. Of course, you're very welcome to practice mindfulness outside of those parameters, but you're trying to give yourself a particular slot, a particular practice, yeah, that you know whether you've done it or not. So try to carry your book with it, and you can notice whether you can mark in your book each day whether you've done it or not. And if you can, say just something like a sentence about how it went. Don't be too fastidious about that. If you don't remember to do that, don't worry. See if you can come up with a practice, yeah? So what I want you to do just now, and you can still at the moment be aware of your weight on the cushion, can't you? It's not, you don't have to stop doing that just now, just because you're now going to do something. I just want you to try to think of how you're going to do this daily practice, a mindful walk every day, around 10 minutes. You might even think of what might be the issues of that. Like you might have not have a set schedule. You might have a very different schedule at the weekend than the week. You might never walk anywhere. You might cycle rather than walk. How are you going to find a chunk of that movement? It doesn't even need to be walking. It can be cycling. It can be doing something else. It's some kind of body movement that you're going to use as a practice. Yeah, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day. So let's just pair up, or twos or pairs, and try to be as really specific about that as possible. Yeah, and then there'll be a bit of time at the end to just check if there's any questions.